Alright everyone, it's time for a more thorough review of what happened the other day. Of course, Chris Christie dropping out of the presidential race. He chose not to endorse anyone, and appears to have effectively just insulted all of the other candidates. Of course, a lot of it was the TDS line, but he also insinuated that anyone who didn't call out Trump as unfit was themselves unfit. That's something that Nikki Haley hasn't actually done. It's something that DeSantis hasn't actually done. Hell, even Asa Hutchinson, for what it's worth, I don't think has. And Vivek Ramaswamy generally defends Donald. I think that I called it based on the non-endorsement at the critical 11th hour and the hot mic moment that happened minutes before he actually really went live at his town hall. It was a hot mic moment. Again, link in the description. You can listen to it for yourself. I think that my prediction that Chris Christie was a plant who was actually in favor of Trump the entire time is actually true. Imagine, if you will, you take a relatively unlikable individual and you top load them with TDS, draining the TDS of the other candidates out of the room and basically forcing them to play the same game. I don't know whether Christie thought this idea up himself. He is strategically intelligent, or whether this is part of a more organized effort. But I suspect that the fact that he didn't then come out and endorse Nikki Haley specifically is yet more evidence that really, I mean, I can't think of any other way to explain it other than he's a plant, a confederate, so to speak. A small c confederate. Of course, it's a term within rich illusionism. You have somebody in the crowd who you inevitably choose to do the trick who's actually working for you. Chris Christie's goal, again, whether developed by Chris Christie or somebody close to Trump or Trump himself or some combination thereof, I think was always in the race to try to undermine the other candidates and sort of knock them out of the way. You've siphoned off enough of the TDS vote that nobody else ever consolidated. Nikki Haley right now, if you were to add her numbers to Chris Christie's numbers, would probably win in New Hampshire. But there's no endorsement. Chris Christie effectively smacked him on the face on the way off stage and chuckled about it, and now he's gone on his merry way. You can expect him to continue doing the TDS thing. I also predicted in 2016 that Omarosa was like this. That some of the more severe TDS sufferers, effectively the whole goal was to say bizarre things that often weren't true, to single-mindedly attack Donald Trump in order to take more meaningful criticism of policy or something like that and shit-can it, to drain it out of the news cycle. I often thought that about her. I often thought that about others at the time, that people who appeared to be very, very much anti-Trump were secretly working with him, with or without his particular knowledge of that going on. The hot mic moment is more important, though. The non-endorsement matters and a little bit sus, you know. The hot mic, though, just happens to occur at exactly the moment that Chris Christie is muttering about Ron DeSantis calling up his campaign, all terrified that he's going to drop and endorse Haley, talking about how Haley's going to get creamed, she's going to get smoked in New Hampshire, and had bought $65 million by the way of ads, much of which comes from Democrat PAC groups, by the way. It really got TDS so bad that they're once again trying to prop up a different candidate from the cross-party perspective. The Democrats right now, because New Hampshire's primary doesn't even matter for Dem Party purposes, because of course they decided to keep their same date, and they were effectively disqualified by the Democratic Party. Biden's going to win there on a write-in campaign, actually, and we're going to wait and see how effective that write-in campaign is. Now, also because New Hampshire's primary is open, they've been trying to get Democrats to take a Republican ballot. They've been attempting to stuff the ballots in favor of Nikki Haley specifically. That's because she is the establishment choice candidate. Ron DeSantis could have been, but he faltered too much, and now he's in third in Iowa, arguably. He's third nationally. The gusto that he had originally, mainly through his own personal failings, as a candidate, partially because of his campaign staff, and I think partially because of the shill influencers, so-called online, being so acerbic and unlikable generally in their bants, he pissed away his chance. I think they would have been comfortable with him, because anyone but Orange Man basically originally seems to be their premise, but now they've consolidated behind Nikki Haley. She's pro-war, she's pro-wokeness. I mean, we've seen this. Look at the fucking debate the other night between her and DeSantis, of course. There's a supercut I'll be talking about later, released by the DeSantis campaign, ironically enough, actually linking to it. A supercut of some of the lies that she told during that debate. Oh, no, I never said that. Oh, no, I never did that. Oh, no, I never blocked the transgender bathroom bill in my home state. Well, she did. That's not necessarily going to win over most Republicans, etc., etc., etc. Nikki Haley, the neocon. Chris Christie, meanwhile, appeared on the surface to be very TDS, but between the hot mic moment and its perfect timing, it wouldn't have mattered if it had been at any other point during that particular discussion, probably. It just happens to be the moment in which Christie is shit-talking the other two people in the field that have any legs at all. That's really, really coincidental. I'm supposed to believe that. And then followed up with a non-endorsement speech in which he, again, trash talks the other candidates and tells people, oh, look, these guys are unfit for office. I was the only one that was. The only other explanation is that he's just bitter and egotistical, and that would be believable except for the string of very coincidental and self-deprecating remarks that he's made. Since he got into the field, I first thought, well, this is a dude who worked with Trump. It's a dude who was his literal debate coach against Biden. He was a campaign advisor. They seem to be friendly. He even talks about how he knew, oh, I know Trump for the last 20 years. I can tell you that if he gets in there, he's going to work for himself before he works for you. Again, just piles of TDS plus sidewinders at the other candidates and the apparent admission that the DeSantis campaign is freaking out and falling apart and that they were begging him for support while Nikki Haley's going to get smoked in New Hampshire. I mean, it lines up a little bit too perfectly. I think that I called it. I think that I was right. Chris Christie was always a staged candidate. And also, there's one more piece of evidence, and I don't think I've discussed this. Chris Christie could never have believed that he was going to be viable. A few months in, every campaign staffer that he had knew that he was not going to be the nominee, and that there was no viable path forward to winning a state, let alone winning enough states to become the nominee. If he was only waiting in the wings as a possible, hey, Trump got brokered out and now they've got to choose between the also-rans, if he actually believed that, he would have stayed in. Why would he get out? He would want to be on that stage at the RNC's big convention with a handful of delegates. He had enough legs in New Hampshire to grab a delegate or two, because I believe it's proportional there. And by the way, in Iowa, Trump could end up grabbing all the delegates because I think that if he gets 51% of the vote, I believe that he gets them all instead of it being proportional. It looks like that's probably going to happen since DeSantis, Haley doesn't have any real support in Iowa. She never targeted the state, and, DeSantis has faltered so much. So Chris Christie's hot mic moment plus non-endorsement plus the timing of his dropping out. I don't think it's because he didn't want to come in fourth place or something. He doesn't care. He's been an also-ran before. He was in 2016. He never had any real viability there. But he stayed in long enough to roast Marco, didn't he? He stayed in long enough to mainly attack Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Again, it's awfully coincidental. Whenever Trump's running, he gets in and then he batters the other candidates. Very intriguing. That's about all. Peace out.